Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to Stormgate Central. So today we are going over the new balance patch for the current beta of Stormgate. As I mentioned to some of you guys who've watched yesterday's video, a new patch was on the way as they basically open up the, or cancel, I guess you should say, the NDA for the game for the remainder of this beta phase up until, I think it's the 11th of March. So we're going to be able to continue to post content on the game, and as such, they have taken the opportunity here to balance out a few things in the game that definitely needed a bit of love and attention. Guys, if you aren't already subbed to the channel, make sure you do that so you don't miss out on any future videos. We are going to be covering a lot of stuff Stormgate related here. News, there's going to be casts and guides over the next weeks and months here leading up to the early access release in the summertime. Also, I am doing a beta key giveaway. If you go and watch yesterday's video, you can find out all of the details about that. But without further ado, let's just jump into all of the juicy changes to the game. So first of all, unit active abilities should no longer have a negative effect on frames per second. So probably a lot of you guys may have noticed, especially if you're a Vanguard player and you use something like the Nano Swarm for the medtechs, you use that on your Vulcans and you've got just this massive Deathball army going up against an Infernal army. My FPS, and I've got a pretty decent rig, drops down to like the mid to low 20s. So it really does make it a little bit hard to micro. Obviously, the game hasn't been fully optimized yet, but I think that this particular bug here had a really negative effect, so nice to see that they've changed that. The Bob Overcharge, it can no longer be cast on command posts under construction. So if you guys have watched any of my build guides here on the channel, you'll notice that a lot of the time I recommend doing that. So disclaimer, don't do that anymore because it will not work. Now, Shroudstone Manifestation can no longer be cast near shrines or shroud stones that are under construction, and also can't be used near enemy shrines or shroud stones. So this was obviously a bug, something that some people were abusing, and I know that in the $10,000 tournament they did put up an announcement there saying that players were not allowed to use this tactic, as it was of course unintended. So really good to see that they have fixed that one there. They also fixed an issue where Lancers and Medtechs could unintentionally fit through certain walled-off areas. So sometimes you would make a wall-off and not even your Bobs or your Scouts could fit through there, but these massive chunky Lancers and the Medtechs, yeah, no problem at all. They just waltzed on through. So that was a bug, and that's now been sorted. Also here, the Magmadon's Trample ability apparently was affecting air units and also structures. So that's news to me, and that is no longer going to happen there. And then the final general change here is that level 2 speed camps have been updated to spawn fewer goats. So for any of you guys who have watched a lot of the higher skill sort of pro Infernal games, that has pretty much become the meta these days, is that you build a Conclave and get a Gaunt, and then you build an Iron Vault and get a Brute, and you go straight for that speed camp, you infect all 5 of the speed creeps, and you basically get 5 Fiends absolutely free. Obviously that is very, very strong, so they've basically made it so that camp is now going to spawn fewer goats or creeps there, so you can't get as many Fiends from it. Okay, next up are the Vanguard, and it saddens me to say, because I really like my Scouts, but they have seen a pretty hefty nerf here. So the Beryllium Claws upgrade, which, if you're not aware, is the upgrade that increases their damage against light targets, very good against workers, very good against creeps. That upgrade cost has been increased from 25 Luminite and 25 Therium to 50/50. So not the biggest deal in the world, but they've also increased the research time from 30 seconds to 60 seconds. So for those people who have been getting out upgraded Scouts really, really early in the game and just being super oppressive with them, keeping that Infernal player in their base and going around the map and taking all of the creeps, it seems like you're still going to be able to do that, I think, but it's going to be a little bit more work and it's going to get out a little bit later. Now, the Hedgehog has seen a very slight buff here, so mobilized Hedgehog ammo recharge time decreased from 1.2 seconds to 1 second, and deployed Hedgehog ammo recharge time also decreased from 0.6 seconds to 0.5. So a very slight buff there to the recharge time, but of course each of the rounds for the Hedgehog recharges individually, so a 0.2 second increase to the mobile ammo there is actually kind of a big deal, but I did kind of expect to see a bit more of a buff for the Hedgehog, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't know about you guys, but I never see anybody using the Hedgehogs because they're just not really the meta right now. They kind of got hit with the nerf hammer a little bit too hard, I think, in the last patch, and now it seems that Frost Giant are trying to bring them up to speed. Now this next one is pretty big. The Vulcan here, range increased from 7 to 8. That may not sound like a lot, but that is actually a major change in the way that units sort of dance around your other units and the composition that they're in. As you guys will know, if you're a Vanguard player, you kind of want to have your Lancers at the front, the Exos somewhere in the middle with the medtechs there, and you generally are moving your Exos around the place, trying to take them away from damage and target enemies with them, and then you'll have the Vulcans at the back. And a lot of the time, the Vulcans just can't quite get in range of the Infernal frontline army to start doing that damage, and they simply start walking back and forth. They're incredibly slow, and it can be very frustrating. So that extra 1 range there, I think, is actually going to make a tremendous amount of difference. So moving on to the evac, release Skymine cooldown decreased from 120 seconds to 20 seconds. Also, the Skymine now has a 15 Luminite cost, and they persist until detonated or killed. So that is actually really, really big there. You could essentially now put up a defensive net of Skymines around your base with that 20-second cooldown if you're not really using your evac for anything else, and they are going to persist until detonated or killed. So that's kind of cool. The Hornet is up next. Reclaimer, Stinger's damage decreased from 10 to 8. So that is a really, really big nerf there. Again, another bummer for me, because my new favorite build that I was about to make a guide on for you guys is 2 base Hornets. So much fun to play with. And if we think about this in numbers of Hornets, a Bob has 130 HP, and before this balance change, they hit for 10 damage, so you would have had to have 13 Hornets to one-shot a Bob with them. Now, with them only doing 8 damage, you actually need 17 Hornets. So that is quite a major difference there. It is a 20% damage nerf, so not to be scoffed at. I can't say it comes as a major surprise though, because I have heard the lead 1v1 multiplayer balance dude, Mr. Kevin Dong, he has said that he kind of wants them to be an air-to-air fighter and to have a very mild role when it comes to air-to-ground. Now for the flat cannon here, anti-air attack range increased from 10 to 12, and attacking an air unit will now only splash damage to other air units. So seems here they nerfed it a little bit too hard. It got a major nerf when this beta phase came out for its range and its damage. So I think this change definitely goes hand in hand with the Hornet change. It seems like Frost Giant are kind of trying to stamp down on some of that air aggression play that we've been seeing out of some people, including me. Alright, that is it for the Vanguard. Moving on to the Infernals. So Hellborne Resurgence Animus cost has been increased from 25 to 40. So that is the ritual on the top bar there, the ability that allows you to reset all of your charges on a production building. Definitely one of the better things in the game, so I'm not surprised to see the Animus cost increased a little bit there for that. For the Imp here, Inflamed Imp damage has been decreased from 100 and then plus 100 to structures to 100 and plus 50 to structures, so a little bit nerfed just to the structural damage there. Maybe they've been used to take out sentry posts and shroud stones and that sort of thing. Not really sure there. I don't really see people using Inflamed Imps all too much, at least not as much as I used to. Now we have a few changes to the Brutes and Fiends here. So first of all, for the Brute, the Sunder Soul ability now grants spawned Fiends maximum white health, which is 15. However, if we take a look at the Fiend changes here, all Fiends will now start with 0 white health by default, which is down from 7.5, which was 50%. So this includes both Fiends born from Infest and the ones that drop from Brutes on death. However, the movement speed has been increased from 6 to 7, so I'm going to expect to see a lot more Fiend run-bys as if they haven't been prolific enough as it is. That's certainly going to be interesting there. But this is a really cool change to see, because I saw this on Reddit and I know exactly where Mr. Kevin Dong got this from. It was a comment on Reddit that basically was complaining about the fact that if you don't hit Z to split your Brute and get the Fiends and your Brute dies, you just get the Fiends anyway. And it seems like some of the micro of the game has been diminished somewhat there. So this guy on Reddit, unfortunately I can't remember his name, but he suggested why not have a little bit of extra value here so that if you manually split your Fiends and you have the APM or the micro to be able to do that at the right timing, you get the white health for your Fiends. But if you don't, and your Brute just dies, you still get the Fiends, but they don't get that white health. And that is exactly what this change is here. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, it's just the white health, which is I think only like 25% of their health anyway, but every little helps, right? And I think at the pro level, this is going to have an effect. Now for the gaunt, weapon bounce range has been decreased from 5 to 3.5. So that means that the infest there for the gaunt is going to be a lot less effective. It's going to have to throw a lot more of those glaives in order to infect your entire army, especially if it's a little bit more spaced out. So the Doombringer can now load units whilst in mobilized mode. Additionally, the inner radius has been decreased from 0.5 to 0.1, and the outer radius has been decreased from 1 to 0.5. I'm not entirely sure what radius they're talking about. I'm going to assume they mean the radius of the shroud that the Doombringer puts out when it's deployed on the ground, but maybe they're just talking about like the model size, like the size of the actual unit. I don't really know there, but the big change I would say is that you can now load units in when it's mobilized. So previously what you had to do is deploy the Doombringer, put your gaunts in there, and then put it, you know, up in the sky, mobilize it again, take it to the enemy base, deploy it again, take the units out, and that's kind of how it went. So now, just like with the evac, you're going to be able to at least load your units into it whilst it's on the move. Not sure how this change is going to play out. I mean, I think the Doombringer was already very powerful for the stage of the game that you can get it at, but maybe further down the line, they're going to make it a little bit of a higher, you know, tech item here. Now, some really major changes here coming in for the Hellborne, the new unit, the siege unit for the Infernals. Supply cost has been increased from 5 to 8. The cost has been increased from 150 to 250 225. Health has been increased from 200 to 260. Damage increased from 30 plus 40 to structures to 50 and plus 50 to structures. And the cone splash damage has been increased from 15 plus 20 to structures to 25 and then plus another 25 to structures. So it seems here like they're basically just beefing up both the cost and the efficacy of this particular unit. And I have to say, I think this is a really good change. A lot of the time I will be up against an Infernal player, and they would have, you know, 8, 10, 12 Hellborne, and it didn't really feel as scary as it should. Now, if you see that many Hellborne on the field, you should definitely be scared because they have more health, more damage, but conversely, they're also going to cost more Luminite and more Therium to build. Next up here, the Shadow Flyer now deals 125 damage to its primary target and 50 damage in an area of 3, which is down from 125 in the entire area. So we all know the Shadow Flyers had absolutely absurd AoE damage, and no wonder it's because they just did 125 damage to absolutely everything in the vicinity. So definitely a major change that was needed there. And then finally we have the Weaver. So lash cooldown increased from 12 seconds to 16 seconds. The lash damage has been changed from 60 to 20% of a unit's maximum health. So that means it's going to be way more effective against units with a big health pool. And then Consume has had its cooldown increased from 0.25 seconds, I assume that is, to 5. But that is just about going to wrap this video up, guys. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel. And also check out this video yesterday if you are interested in winning a beta key. We also talked about the rework that Frost Giant is going to be doing to the creep camps and some new teasers for the third faction. But otherwise, guys, I hope you have a cracking day, and I'll see you all in the next video.